Recorded live from Portland, Oregon, it's the Transamorous Network podcast. Let's get it on. Welcome to the Transamorous Network. I'm Perry.
I'm Remy.
And we're having a wonderful time with this new couple that we have met.
Beautiful couple. Oh my God.
Oh my God, they're so beautiful. African-American couple out of Georgia. It's
Atlanta.
Georgia. Yes, Atlanta, Georgia. Tier and Samaya. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
Pleasure to be with you.
So glad that you could make it.
Glad that you guys are here.
Awesome. So, how did we meet, Tier?
I met as a result of finding your Transamorous project. I believe I came across it on Facebook, or I was looking for podcasts that had a trans subject matter, and you came up in the draw.
I see.
Lovely.
I'm curious, why were you looking for that?
Just because I'm in a relationship with a trans woman, and I'd like to keep abreast of trans issues. We're pretty involved in the community, and I just wanted to make sure that I was keeping abreast of issues.
Right on.
Trans supportive, brother. I love
totally
it. That's
trans
what I'm talking
supportive.
about.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
what I'm talking about.
Pretty amazing.
Go ahead, girl. Yes.
So this is Tier and I'm gonna get the name Samaya. Samaya, thank you. Tier and Samaya, and obviously Tier is a trans attracted brother, and his wife. You've been married for two.
Don't look at me.
Okay.
I actually didn't know that they were
3 years now. 3 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
On her birthday, August 22nd.
Oh, it's coming up. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. And so obviously Samaya is transgender.
How long have we been together?
In total, we've been together for 7 years.
7.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Oh my gosh. So you guys have been together for a long time.
Made me wait for that ring.
Since 2010, yes. So
Wow.
7 years.
How did you guys meet?
Well, it's funny. We actually met beforehand. We were attending the same school together.
He was working on his his PhD at Georgia State, and I was an undergrad.
Wow.
And kept on
Encountering each other, and I guess he had peeped to me.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up, so then, he tried to talk to me a couple times, and
I wasn't really available at the time. I was in another relationship at the time. Samaya, she was, she was in a different place. But we had mutual friends, and we kept on circling around each other through our mutual friends.
So he was that guy that I would always see, and I would be like, it's him again. And he was always nice to me, always kind, and I could tell that he was attracted. And then through various iterations of like online, whatever the hottest online meeting thing was at the time,
Mm-hmm.
he would always hit me up. And I would see him and be like, Because at the time, I think my value system was different. I was looking for someone that was a little more flashy.
Yeah, she was looking for that flashy dude.
Because we live in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And he did not have a vehicle. And that was a deal breaker.
I was between vehicles at the time.
They are so cute.
The weekend that I finally broke down and bought a little putt get around car was the weekend that she conceded to go out with me on a friend date.
Well, can I tell you what happened, y'all?
Yes,
it was
please.
so amazing. Talk to me on the phone.
Hang on a second. Samia, is it Samia or Samaya?
It's Samaya.
Samaya. So when you hang on. When you lean into the phone, the top half of your head gets cut off and we can only see your mouth. So yes. So yes, if you could talk like that, and then don't kick the table, because when you kick the table, the phone vibrates.
That's him, not me.
I know it was. Okay, go ahead.
So friend date. First friend date.
Also the friend date.
But before the friend date, before I even agreed to go on that, I told him a week before, I said, we were talking, and I had finally reconnected, and he was like, do you remember me? And I was like, I have no clue who you are. And I kind of knew who he was, but I didn't want to give him all that.
Right.
And so I was like, I don't know who you are. He was like, well, let me reintroduce myself. And he introduced himself and he told me what he did. He said he was a chemist and he worked at Coca-Cola. And I was like, okay. And as in the conversation, he revealed that he didn't have a car. And I was like, I'm at the point in my life where the bare minimum standard for a man is that you're going to have a ride, because I can't do the bus day no more. I'm tired. We can't do that. That's not safe. It's just not conducive to healthy. I just need to know you at least have that baseline. And he said, okay, I'll call you back when I get a call.
Oh.
And 1 week later, he calls me back and he goes, I got a call.
Oh.
$1,000 piece of shit from Craigslist that he bought, but it was a chariot to me because he bought that just to take me out. And I wouldn't even commit to a real date, so we did a friend date. And basically, the friend date never ended. We moved in together a week later, and now here we are 7 years later.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing, you guys. Now, Samaya. Thank you, Samaya. So I'm gonna get it right.
Girl,
it just takes. Tell her. Okay. So now you heard.
Little hope.
She told you.
I got you, girl. I'm trying.
So Samaya, so you're really clear about what was going on with you, and probably still are clear about what is going on with you. Were you so tell us? So we're gonna flip flop back and forth between you and Tier. So let's start with you. How long did you know you were trans?
4 years old. I remember my mother and I have a sister that is just a year, like a year in between us. And my mother would bathe us together. And I remember my mother saying, what's wrong with her? Like pointing at my sister. And I remember, she's missing. Like, what's wrong with her? And my mom goes, she's a girl and you're a boy. And I remember looking her right in her face and saying, no, man, no, I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. And I was like, something's wrong with her, pointing at my sister. And my mom goes, and I just remember this look on her face of like shock. And I was just like, I'm a girl. And she said, no, you're not. And I remember that was our last bath together. And I also remember that my mom at that point began to like be really concerned for my safety. Very concerned for my safety. I think she knew at a very young age that I had a very strong social identity. And even growing up, I was not allowed to play with boys because in my community, I'm from South Carolina, and in my community, I immediately became, for lack of a better phrasing, the town sissy.
Yeah. What year was this?
So I was born in 1983, 84, 85, 86, 87. So 1987.
Okay.
Early 90s.
Through. So a lot of people talk about male privilege and what it is to go through this transition where you have to give up this privilege of being perceived as male. I was always perceived as an other, an it, a thing, a small town. Literally, time I had gotten to high school, the reputation about me had gotten to the point where people from adjacent high schools would come and ask my friends or my band members or the other people that I was around, where's the faggot? Because they wanted to see me, because I already had begun to kind of be gender queer, I guess is the term now, by high school.
Interesting. And so I presume that those situations, those experiences had you become more strident in who you were, as opposed to like turning inward or turning away from who you were. Is that right?
Definitely. So to give you more context, my mother is a teacher and she taught in the same school district. And at one point I went to the same school that she taught at. And my father is a police officer. And so then had this connection to like these like really like heteronormative, patriarchal, strong men. And my father kind of saw me as kind of an embarrassment at the time. Now we're good now, but at the time he perceived me as kind of an embarrassment. I was also burdened with being the eldest child and having, and I was always very intelligent. I got straight A's in school. So I had that expectation of being like this standard bearer. And I was always made to feel like I was letting them down by being myself. So I had to always go out of my way to prove that what I looked like, what I sound like, and how I showed up in the world was not what people thought it was. I like to say that I live in exact defiance of other people's no's.
Yeah.
I've always no, and then I had to turn that no into a yes.
So okay, excuse me for what I'm about to say, because it may make you a little angry. So in this space of defying other people's no's and turning them into yeses, what was it about Tier not conforming to the gender stereotype, especially the black male gender stereotype, that he have a ride, that made it a deal breaker for you? Had you been on so many bus ride dates and you were like, screw this, I'm not going to do that anymore? Or what was it?
It was being black, poor, and friends in the South, and being treated as a second-class citizen in so many different ways, and then having men particularly give me the least amount of what they had to offer, always making me feel like what I was meant that I was not a real girl. So then I had to tolerate a certain level of treatment, a certain level of dating, a certain level of experience. And so by the time Tier came into my life, I was a college graduate. I had already worked in corporate America, and I had gotten used to seeing a certain standard of man. And so then in my mind, no vehicle equals no love. Because my coworkers and the people that I work with, I see how they treat their wives, their girlfriends, and that's what I expected.
Right.
And so he was going to come at me with another version of what I had already experienced.
Got it. So I get that your parents have this background that would instill the qualities that you seem to embody. So this is kind of a dumb question because I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So you're transient in the South. It seems to me that the pressure of being trans in the South would create circumstances that are very hard to overcome. And the stories that you could create about yourself and about your future could have you basically stuck in a no life having life. How is it that you ended up going to college and then ended up working in the corporate world?
So I like to consider myself, can you still see me? Am I good? I like to consider myself a journey woman. And so I ran away from home at 18. I came to Atlanta, Georgia. I had a boyfriend at the time, and the relationship was abusive. I left. He was the person that moved me here. And then I was homeless for a while. I had friends that had done, so let me tell you the real deal. I already knew I had scholarships lined up. I'm also an athlete. I was a runner. So I had athletic scholarships and I had academic scholarships lined up before I moved here. But because I didn't think that I could live in my true experience, I abandoned all of that to come and live my truth with what I thought was going to be lifelong boyfriend.
Right.
He ended up crazy and I ended up having to leave him. And that resulted in me connecting with these other trans women, these people like me, who we were young and we just wanted to be ourselves. But because of my background, I had very strong values about what I would allow myself to do. And while my friends and I would go on the stroll with them and I would socialize with them because that was my social circle. But they quickly ran me off the stroll because I wasn't selling. I couldn't put a price on myself because I felt like I could never explain to my police officer father why something like that would be an option.
Yeah.
still wanted to prove to them that being who I was didn't mean that I had forgotten all they taught me. And so I watched my friends go through the struggle, and I struggled harder than them because truthfully, they had income and I didn't. But I watched my friends struggle and go through that, and I said to myself, "Wait a minute." I did an assessment. I had met someone that was in college, and they were getting refund checks. And I was like, and real talk, I went to college because I realized that they would pay for my rent. I realized that I was smart enough that I could get into, I did really well on my SATs, and I was smart enough to know that I could get into any school basically here in Atlanta. Like, they weren't really that competitive. I had gotten into really big schools that I didn't take the scholarship for. So I was like, yeah, I'll apply. I Googled schools in downtown Atlanta, and Georgia State came up. I looked at the requirements, knew I could get in, got a scholarship, and started like that next semester. Now, my journey there was long. I dropped out different times. It took me 8 years to get out. But I knew that I already had the capacity to handle college, and I felt empowered enough that I knew that if I went to school, I could get my bills paid. So that's just what I used college for. I maxed out on all of my loans. I got all of the scholarships that are available, and that was my strategy of survival. Wow. It was school.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's pretty awesome what you were able to do.
Yeah.
And to have the presence of mind to do it in the face of what I can imagine some pretty big hardships.
Definitely.
Yeah. So okay. So what were you, now, I think I asked you this already. If I ask a question that you don't like or don't want to answer, just say you don't want to answer it. Okay.
Right now, I'm good.
Okay. Have mercy. Okay, so when you moved to Atlanta and you're hanging out with your friends, and your friends were doing the survival sex, and you were not with the guy that you were with because he was abusive. What were you dating? And if you were dating, what were the stories that you had about dating men?
Your laugh is very, very problematic, but
so I've heard a lot of the stories.
Oh, I'm sure. And yeah.
I always knew that I was beautiful. I always knew that the power in being a beautiful woman was not giving up the sex. And or at least I felt like I was too pretty to have to do that. So I always had, and the way I like to say it is, I depended on the kindness of strangers.
She's a Southern girl, Tier.
South Carolina, born and bred. Yes.
So I had an understanding that I could just, he calls it the wink and wiggle, but I to have a certain influence over men. And so I've always had some type of financial supporter, some type of benefactor, someone appreciated all that I was, and I didn't necessarily have to be engaged in sexual. Like I've been a serial relationship type person. I've always been, some people would say, kept in a way. Being honest. And so a lot of relationships had this power dynamic where I was not really given access to capital or resources that would make me independent, but I was always taken care of.
Got it.
And made comfortable.
Yeah. Did you, whenever you met these guys, did you always let them know that you were trans?
Always. Because I didn't see trans as necessarily being a negative. Because of my ability to pass, because I am pretty, it actually was an a point of intrigue for me. I'm very discreet about who I've dated, but I've dated I've dated professional athletes. I've dated very successful real estate developers. I've dated a certain level of man. And so then being trans was an asset and not a negative in the dating life. Now in red life, it was hard. I still had people discriminating on me for jobs. I still had to deal with, being, physically violent situations in public. But as far as my dating life, I've always had somebody that had me.
Very interesting. Such a different experience than most of the people we speak with.
Everyone's got a different story.
That's right. That's right.